I wanted to make this video as a tribute for the 40th anniversary of the tragic death of Rick Nelson, who died at the age of 45 in a plane crash on December 31st, 1985. In this video, we'll visit Guntersville, Alabama, where Rick performed his last concert before his untimely death. I'll show you the site of the last concert, the hotel where he and his band spent 3 nights, and the airport where their aircraft departed just 3 hours before their tragic demise. I've noticed more videos made about the crash site in Texas, so I wanted to make a video on where the journey began. Due to so much information that was available, I may not be able to stay within my usual 3 to 5 minutes. Let's begin with some background on Ricky Nelson. Born Eric Hilliard Nelson on May 8, 1940, began using the nickname of Ricky when he was a young child. He first appeared on his family's radio program, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, when he was 8 years old. After the show moved from radio to television, Ricky soon became a teen idol and a music star. His music career began when he started performing songs on the TV show. Some of the songs were released as singles and became popular on radio. 2 of my personal favorites were Hello Mary Lou and Travelin' Man. The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet ended in 1966, after 14 seasons on television. Ricky began going by Rick when he was 21 years old and continued his journey as an actor and became a respected musician during his music career. Rick is considered a pioneer of the country rock genre for his work in the late 60s and early 70s with his Stone Canyon Band. Formed in 1969 and whose biggest hit was the 1972 song Garden Party. Randy Meisner was an original member of the Stone Canyon Band who would go on to become a founding member of the Eagles. Now let's talk about Pat Upton. Pat Upton was a 1958 graduate of Geraldine High School in the town of Geraldine, Alabama. Pat went on to serve 4 years in the U.S. Air Force from 1962 to 1966. It was during this time that Pat formed a band, and that band evolved into the Spiral Staircase. The Spiral Staircase is best known for their hit song More Today Than Yesterday, which peaked at number 12 in June 1969 on the Billboard Hot 100. This song would become Pat Upton's signature song as the lead vocalist with his amazing falsetto voice. The band broke up in 1971, but Pat would continue a solo career. While he was in California as a session musician and background singer, he eventually worked on an album with Rick Nelson in the late 1970s. Rick asked him to join the Stone Canyon Band on the road for a few months, but that would eventually turn into 3.5 years from 1979 to 1983. When Pat left the Stone Canyon Band, he also left California where he had lived for more than 20 years and returned to Alabama. He moved his family and bought a house in Guntersville. In May 1985, he opened a nightclub called PJ's Alley, which was in business from 1985 to 1989. He formed his own band called Headline to perform at the club 5 nights a week. Rick Nelson's plane was originally a C-47, but was converted to a passenger DC-3 carrier in 1959. Rick began using the vintage 1944 twin-engine plane in May 1985. In June 1985, the plane was forced to make an unscheduled landing in California due to a failed engine. In September 1985, Rick invited Jerry Lee Lewis to fly with him from Memphis to Champaign, Illinois, to perform at a Farm Aid concert. Jerry Lee Lewis had used this very same plane back in 1971 and told Rick there was nothing that could ever get him back on that plane. On the day of the Farm Aid concert, the plane had engine trouble and was unable to leave, so Rick never made it to the show. In December 1985, Rick Nelson and the Stone Canyon Band were to fly from California to Orlando, Florida, to perform a show on December 27th. They also had a New Year's Eve show booked for the 31st in Dallas, Texas. Instead of flying back to California and then having to turn around and fly back to Dallas, they worked it out to spend a few days with Pat Upton here in Guntersville. On Thursday, December 26, 1985, Rick went to see his twin sons, Matthew and Gunnar, perform with their band, the Nelsons. It was the band's first sold-out show. Rick stayed near the back of the club, incognito, during the performance at the Music Machine, located at 12220 Pico Boulevard. After the show, Rick told them that he loved them and that he admired them as his peers. It would be the last time they ever saw each other. Rick flew out of LA on the 27th for his show in Orlando. There were 2 shows on Saturday, December 28, which were so crowded that the fire marshal had to issue a citation. The bar was closed on Sunday the 29th, and Rick and his fiancée, Helen Blair, rented a car and went on a driving tour of the Tennessee River Valley. Rick Nelson's final performance took place on Monday, December 30th. The last song he ever performed was a Buddy Holly cover song called Rave On, which ironically was the last song Buddy Holly performed as well. TJ's Alley is no longer in business, but here is what the interior looks like today. You can still visit if you're in the mood for pizza. The place is now called Pizza Ed and is located at 373 Gunter Avenue. Here at the Wyndham Garden Hotel is where Rick and his fiancée Helen Blair spent 3 nights. His band members also stayed here when it was then known as Holiday Inn. Room number 106 was known as the Rick Nelson Room and once displayed a few photographs of Rick on the wall. The memorabilia is no longer on display, and the sign was removed from the door. All that remains is this meeting room, known as the Nelson Room. This is the view of the lake that Rick would have seen as he stepped outside of his room. Die-hard fans make pilgrimages here to see where Rick spent his last days. The hotel is located at 2140 Gunter Avenue. Here is a comparison of the old Holiday Inn and the Wyndham Hotel as it appears today. I'm now making my way out of town by crossing the Tennessee River en route to my next destination. I've arrived at the Guntersville Municipal Airport, which is a few miles north of town. Pat Upton asked his bandmates to pick up Rick and his band at the hotel and drive them to the airport on December 31st. The headline band members drove Rick and his group and all their equipment from the Holiday Inn to the airport. The guys then helped load the equipment onto the DC-3 aircraft. I couldn't get any good angles through this fence, so I had to relocate. This aerial image shows the original 3,500-foot runway that was here in 1985. Some of this runway was removed in 2016 when the airport was expanded with a new 5,000-foot-long runway. I'm now in a better position to show you what's left of the runway that was used by Rick Nelson's plane. Pat had to drive to Huntsville that morning and stopped at the airport on his way. That's when this photo was made. This is the last time he would ever see Rick Nelson. On his way back from Huntsville, he noticed the plane still had not left. Departure time was supposed to be 12:40 p.m., but there was a fuel primer problem with one of the engines. The pilots performed maintenance to get the engine running. Pictured here are members of the headline band along with 2 members of the Stone Canyon Band at the airport. This is Damon Johnson, the 19-year-old lead guitarist for Headline, who is from the same town as Pat Upton, Geraldine, Alabama. As the Headline members were about to leave the airport, Damon noticed that someone had left behind a briefcase. He rushed back to the plane, which was already taxiing to the runway. The plane stopped and the door opened for Damon to give them the briefcase. They asked Damon to fly to Dallas with them, but he declined. He was the last person in Alabama to see them alive before they crashed 3 hours later. Damon Johnson would go on to find much success in the music business as a lead singer, lead guitarist, and songwriter of Brother Kane in the 1990s. Their debut album featured the unapologetic Got No Shame, and their second album went gold for 500,000 units sold. Damon has written songs that were recorded by Stevie Nicks, Carlos Santana, Sammy Hagar, and others. He has also played with Thin Lizzy, Alice Cooper, the Black Star Riders, and a country rock band named Whiskey Falls. When Lynyrd Skynyrd's Gary Rossington began having health issues in 2021, he requested that Damon fill in for him until he could return. When Gary passed away in 2023, Damon became a full-time member of the Lynyrd Skynyrd Band. The aircraft departure time was originally 12:40 p.m. Due to the engine problem, it actually departed around 2 p.m. Approximately 3 hours into the flight, smoke was coming from the rear of the cabin and into the cockpit. The pilots were unable to make it to an airport and had to try to land in the nearest available spot. They crash-landed in a field near the town of DeKalb, Texas, approximately 140 miles from their destination of Dallas. The two pilots were able to escape the wreckage with severe burns from the burning craft. Rick Nelson, age 45, his fiancée, and all 5 band members were killed. There are plenty of stories about how the fire started, but the official cause was a faulty gas heater. Today, the tail section of the plane is on display as part of a tribute to the late, great Rick Nelson and the Stone Canyon Band. The Williams House Museum is open to the public at 303 Northeast Front Street in the town of DeKalb, Texas. This will conclude today's video. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in 2026.